Hey everybody, KC here. So I'm going to try and keep my cool about this one. I saw a story that came in from the Washington Post that said, and I quote, "Public health workers, already underfunded and understaffed, are confronting waves of protest at their homes and offices, in addition to pressure from politicians who favor a faster reopening." Lori Trammell Freeman, chief executive of the National Association of County and City Health Officials, said more than 20 health officials have been fired, resigned, or have retired in recent weeks, quote, due to conditions related to having to enforce and stand up for strong public health tactics during this pandemic. And the Association of State and Territorial Health Officials said that attacks on health officials have been particularly awful in California, Colorado, Georgia, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. And when I talk about attacks, I'm talking about threats. I'm talking about phone calls. I'm talking about online harassment that these people have had to put up with. Now, these people, to be clear, are underpaid, underappreciated public servants who are just doing their best, working within the science to keep us safe. That's what they're trying to do. They're not getting off on some kind of power trip. They're doing their best to keep us safe. You know, I spent a lot of my time writing and talking about the food business, right? And the food business is, to a great degree, the food that we eat is safe because of regulators who come in and say, this is the temperatures you have to keep things at. These are the conditions you have to keep things at so that the people who eat the product are safe. That's what they do. Now, are people going to start threatening the people making those regulations because they don't happen to like them? You know, is that where we're headed? Are all regulations good? Of course not. Sometimes do regulations go too far? Absolutely. Some don't. Sometimes regulations don't go far enough. That's what happens. I'm totally a believer in what Dr. Anthony Fauci said, which is right. He said, at the end of this whole thing, you accuse me of having overreacted, then I will have done my job, because the things that we did together to try and keep the population safe kept people safe, and it wasn't as bad as it could have been. Now, this nonsense about threatening people who are just trying to do their job, this is crazy. This is insane. It is utterly reprehensible. The next thing you know, I mean, there are people out there who this is where we're going to put a stop sign, and this is where we're going to put a traffic light. We're going to start threatening those people too, because we think that putting a stop sign there or putting a traffic light there threatens our liberty. Gee, what are we going to do when people start saying, well, you do have to drive on the right-hand side of the street, or you shouldn't drive on the sidewalk, or you got to maintain a speed limit? Are we going to start threatening those people because they're threatening our liberty? I am so angry about this story and the fact that public health officials are being threatened. It is just making me nuts. And I'm calm. You should have seen me when I first read this story. You had to scrape me off the ceiling. These people who are threatening these public servants, they're bullies. They think their own personal needs and desires outweigh any sense of the public good. They feel no responsibility to anything other than what they particularly want, and they're suspicious of anybody who tries to act as a public servant, because the notion of being a public servant, of looking out for the greater good, is completely foreign to the way they think. Listen, if you don't want to believe in the coronavirus, there's not much I can do about that. If you don't want to believe in the pandemic, there's not much I can do about it. But you know something? There are rules out there, and sometimes you have to obey the rules, even if you don't want to. And at the very least, you don't get to threaten the people who are trying to put the rules in place to protect people. You believe what you want, right? But you got to obey the rules. You do that. If you behave in such a way that you're threatening these people, you may think it makes you superior. You may think it makes you a defender of liberty, but it really only makes you one thing. It makes you an asshole. That's what's on my mind this morning. And as always, I want to hear what's on your mind.